This is the Businessy Podcast, and I'm your host, Tatiana Ryan. On the podcast today, we have Brian Hart, founder and president of Philadelphia-based public relations agency, Flackable. Brian will be giving us his insight on financial sector public relations, journalism, and use of artificial intelligence, and some other things. Now let's get to business. Okay, I am here with Brian Hart of Flackable. Thank you so much for taking the time out to sit here and talk with us about your whole business. So I'm going to let loose with you and allow you to tell us everything about Flackable from the beginning to up to now.
Yeah, and first off, Tatiana, it's been way too long. Congrats. I follow you on Twitter. I follow you on Twitter, LinkedIn, and over the years, just watching you continue to grow your brand and the work that you do is really cool. So I'm congrats on the podcast, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
You were the first one, so thank you for doing that.
So let's get into. I can give a little bit of background on myself, my career, and the work that I do. So I own a public relations agency. We're called Flackable. We are based in Center City, Philadelphia, and we are a niche public relations agency primarily focused on the financial services space. And we're even niche beyond that. What we really focus on is growing wealth management firms all around the country. A lot of them are independent firms. Maybe they worked for the big banks, back in the day, broke away, and now have to build their own brands and build credibility behind their brands. And that's where I come in. And, I apply a system and philosophy called credibility marketing, where beyond getting them great press, which is our bread and butter, getting our clients quoted in the Wall Street Journal, getting them to appear on CNBC, getting them in their local business journals, getting them high level press, but beyond the press, the credibility that comes with it, and then helping them weave that and integrate into every aspect of their branding and marketing verticals. That's our whole process. That's the drum I have been banging my entire career. And that's where we really distinguish ourselves in that space. And it's why we do so well in that space. Because credibility is everything.
Exactly. You don't just open an agency and say, here, we're here. You need to build on that. Now, you didn't start, you went to school for PR, but your first job wasn't in that. Where did you actually start?
No, yeah. So I studied public relations at Temple University up in North Philly. And when I graduated back in 2012, we were still kind of on the heels of the Great Recession. The economy was starting to heal, but at a very slow pace. And creative agencies had taken a lot of licks and hits in the aftermath of that whole Great Recession. And they slowly climbed back along with the economy. So when I graduated, I couldn't even get an interview with a creative agency in Philadelphia, let alone an offer. Now, I did have a financial services internship my senior year with a great firm. And I was able to leverage that to get a financial services sales position just in greater Philadelphia. I went in there, learned the sales role, started having some success, and then I just started doing PR for them too, because that's what I had been trained in. I was good at it. And I looked at this small, growing financial services firm where they didn't really have a true marketer on their team at the time. Mm-hmm. And I saw that as an opportunity for me to step in and beyond my day-to-day responsibilities, take over their social media accounts. Mm-hmm. And get their blog, jump started, and do media pitching, do event planning. Mm-hmm. I took a non-PR job and turned it into a hybrid PR position, mm-hmm. Just from taking initiative.
Now, do you see a lot of, not only just financial, but a lot of other different niches having more in-house PR and in-house marketing?
Not in small. When you're talking about small businesses, mm-hmm. a lot of small businesses and financial services and professional services more broadly, a lot of them don't even have a true marketer on the team. Mm-hmm. They'll have an admin assistant who doubles as posting on social media and posting things to the blog, even though they've never been formally trained on marketing. Or they'll have a head of business development, a salesperson who they'll task with marketing responsibilities. Listen, there's a big difference between sales and marketing. Are there marketers who are good at sales and vice versa? Yeah, but that shouldn't be the expectation. You cannot conflate the two. I mean, they are very, two complementary disciplines, but two very different disciplines. And that's the power of the work that we do, because when we work with these small growing firms who have that admin who is the de facto social media manager, we provide them with guidance and training. We don't manage it for them. We don't offer direct marketing services. But we'll work with that person and give them templates and systems and processes that they can repeat, to build some consistency and momentum when it comes to social media and some of the other ways that are, can be very effective in leveraging public relations success. So that's what we do.
What would you suggest to someone looking for a PR firm as, just desperate, saying, we need help here. We're trying to climb, but we need to grow bigger and better. So what would you suggest somebody look for?
Well, know if you're going to work with an outsourced solution, like an agency like mine, or like a freelancer or a consultant, know what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. When I have a prospect call me, and one of the things they ask is, well, how many new sales are you going to get me in the first few months? I tell them, we're not involved with your sales process. We're going to be an adrenaline shot to the marketing and sales systems that you've got going on. But we're not talking to leads. We're not converting them for you. We are not an outsourced sales solution. We are a public relations agency. So, if you measure success or failure purely based on how many sales you convert over a short period of time, you're probably not ready to work with an agency like ours. You probably have bigger problems than PR at that point.
Now, have you ever had to talk to somebody and be honest with them like that?
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize how how powerful PR can be.
Right.
Yes, I mean, I've helped RIAs go from 200 million, in assets under management to over $1 billion. We're known for taking independent wealth management firms over that billion mark. That's our bread and butter. We have a long line and reputation of doing that, but we're not doing all of it. We are not replacing their sales team. We're just giving them a whole lot of new ammo. And if they're leveraging it properly, there's no reason why they should not be scaling at a high level.
Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to some of the things we've seen in the news with those higher level, the FTX debacle, the Theranos, even to Anna Delvey, But on the other aspect of what they did, a lot of them are being glorified in the media. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I cannot wait until the FTX HBO movie comes out, because I mean, this has been under the microscope. I mean, everything that went on there for months now, and I feel like every week we're still learning new wrinkles to that insane story and debacle, that hurt a lot of people, and
dirt behind it.
Yeah, it's
just the dirt.
Fascinating. It's reality. It is the most pure form of reality TV, because it really happened right before our eyes.
It totally did.
And I listen. I'm chuckling about it. A lot of people got hurt by that. And I feel horrible for them. And I hope that there's some resolutions that help some of the people who took major losses. To
now they're doing clawbacks and everything to try and get that money back. But it's the same thing with, as another example, it was the Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos. I don't know if you read the whole business syllabus, but when I read it, I was like, I don't really believe in this. But as somebody coming to you and saying, okay, this is my business plan, and you bringing that adrenaline shot to them through social media, through all of their marketing, through making sure all of their employees are crisp and clean and, not having bad backgrounds and stuff like that. As a PR agency, what happens when that fallout and you have some really bad things happen and everybody's like, oh my God, the shit isn't hitting fan? Brian, help.
Yeah, well, when your entire brand is built around hype and completely just a media play, you're going to have a
Firefly
lot of
Festival.
blind spots and a lot of risk that you're putting up there. A lot of these VCs that are looking for the next unicorn, they don't want a seasoned business veteran running, being the face of that company. They want that college dropout in a hoodie because it's just a more sexy story for them to tell. And the type of, hype that they can generate behind that, to get them to that unicorn stage. So one thing every brand needs to be aware of is, make sure that you've got substance before all the glamour and glitz. If you're prioritizing the glamour and glitz, that can be very bad. Before we jumped on this, I was talking a little bit about my alma mater, Temple University. They have gotten horrible press lately because of the student safety concerns that are going on there, and I've been very critical of them because they seem to treat every criminal instance that pops up, every violent crime and robbery and so forth that pops up in and around their campus, they treat it as if it's a PR problem. No, the bad PR is a symptom of a much longer or larger organizational problem. And if they keep treating it like a PR problem, they're never going to get to the root of the actual problem that is terrifying students in the community. It needs to be addressed in an honest manner. But there's a lot of crossover to the FTX thing, because again, they got so absorbed with the vision and the optics and aesthetics of what they were doing that they let some glaring, deep-seated, dark issues go ignored for way too long, and it caught up with them.
Oh, it totally did. And I remember I was at the Phillies game, at the playoffs game, and the whole FTX fallout, and I was like, wait a second, they were a huge like advertiser at the playoffs, in major in sports and everywhere you saw FTX. So it was very, very interesting to follow up to this point. And I have to get your take on the very agenda-based journalism you just brought up with the PR and, it's bad PR that all this stuff is happening. But we've also got a lot of journalists out there that are very agenda-based and they're picking their stories. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it is a problem. And like any profession, there are good PR people and bad PR people. There are good podcasters and bad podcasters. And there are very, very good, decent journalists who want to get to the truth and want to be objective and strive to that. And then there are very bad, biased, agenda-driven journalists too, who promote their narrative over the objective truth. I got in a Twitter scuffle the other day with Ernest Owens, editor-at-large at Philly Magazine. We had a little petty back to forth. He is an example of a very thin-skinned journalist here locally. And one who is very much agenda driven and based. I've called him an opinion writer because he is an opinion writer. As a journalist, he uses the word I to talk about himself in his articles more than any true journalist should. So, he kind of picks and chooses when he wants to wear his journalist hat and when he wants to wear his opinion hat. Now that's problematic because it creates the image of media bias. And there's a lot of people who just assume all the media is biased because they see people like him who go back and forth between, agenda-driven writing and opinion writing and actual objective journalism. I think that's very dangerous. You cannot conflate the two. In years past, one of the biggest, divides, there was, a wall between the journalism part of a publication and the advertising part of it. And you would not let them cross over, because as soon as they started crossing over, it undermines any optics of objectivity in them.
And that's
now you've got journalists or you've got writers parading around as journalists and calling themselves journalists who are straight up opinion writers and activists. And that undermines, just like the crossover between advertising and journalism did. Now you've got opinion and editorial where there's a big crossover, and it's very problematic. We should all be concerned about that.
We should all be concerned about it, because we're seeing a lot of it right now, especially with pharmaceuticals, where they're trying to get those sales. And we understand they're trying to get those sales, but a lot of the public now, and which is why independent journalism is starting to bubble up, because the math isn't mathing exactly. So, and what are your feelings with that when you have like that agenda and also sales base? That's hard. That's hard to deal with.
It is. And I mean, we're dealing with a rapidly evolving media climate where we are seeing democratization in how stories are being reported, because it's not like back in the 50s or whatever, where you had NBC, CBS, and ABC, and they were all pretty much telling the same stories. And there were some very good journalists back then too, where they really did take their field seriously and built walls to protect from, any suspicion of driving an agenda, over the truth. So with, independent journalists popping up and independent news sites popping up and so forth, you're getting the good with the bad. You're getting some very good journalism coming out of it, and people who are going out and muckraking and investigating issues and problems that need to be talked about. But then you've also got people out there pushing agendas, just like you see in some of the mainstream media.
Absolutely. And with that, where do you stand on this whole cancel culture, and where people are maybe on both sides of the coin? And it's like, okay, well, that person's saying this, so we need to cancel them so we can still sell whatever we're selling.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I am a cancel survivor. I've been targeted.
We have a club now. Yes.
Yeah, I've fallen into it. I'm very active on Twitter, and I've built a brand that's a little bit brash and unorthodox. In my profession, I named my company Flackable. I didn't want to be called Brian Hart Public Relations, because I didn't want to look like all the other ones, because I'm not like them.
Right.
The way we operate is not like them. We want to be a refreshing alternative to, some of the more suit and tie formal, PR agencies out there, especially in my space.
Okay.
And we've done a good job at that. But with that, yes, I don't shy away from dropping opinions. Am I public relations professional? Of course. I'm also a businessman. I'm also a voter and a citizen. I think we all have multiple layers to our identities and who we are, and trying to push somebody into your narrow view of what their lane is, I think is rather silly, and it's not something I subscribe to. So when we talk about cancel culture, here's the problem I have with the new breed of cancel culture. Years past, a decade ago, it used to be more about holding people of power to account, whether it's big, powerful organizations, government entities, powerful individuals, celebrities, and so forth. That used to be the whole boycott / cancel culture focus. Now it's gone way beyond that, where we are now seeing a normalization of people targeting private citizens and
Mm-hmm.
small business owners
Mm-hmm.
just because they have a difference of opinion than you. And not only just to go after their livelihoods and their reputations and stalk and harass them, but to
Mm-hmm.
intimidate anybody who agrees with them. And that I have a big problem with. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're seeing, and that's got to change.
Mm-hmm. How do you suggest we change that?
I mean, first off, organizations need to stop catering to them. When
Mm-hmm.
you see these cancel mobs, organize and speak out, I mean, have some backbone and
Mm-hmm.
have some principle
Mm-hmm.
in how you evaluate action. If your immediate, instinct is to fire whatever employee got doxxed for whatever they did. If your organization's immediate instinct is to just fire them and issue a public apology,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just the de facto approach to how you handle cancel culture, that is so toxic. You're just as bad as the creeps and stalkers who are out there contacting you in the first place.
Mm-hmm. No, that's actually a really big issue that I was so interested in some of the things that have been going on with the royal family. And there was one person who was she went through a meeting with someone and some words were said, and with no thought as to what the situation was with her, she was fired. And now all of a sudden, all of the facts are now coming out. And now everybody's saying, well, will you bring her back? And that's another thing, like how quickly you can go down with this cancel culture, you can rise back up. Mm-hmm. And you've actually done that just recently, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah. So listen, if you're going to take risks mm-hmm. on any social media platform, my platform of choice is Twitter, but there are people who are out there on Instagram, TikTok. It doesn't matter what platform you're out there. If you do have a little bit of an edgy brand, mm-hmm. it can be brilliant as far as driving impressions and likes and engagement and awareness and subsequently sales, if mm-hmm. if you are running a business. But there's risk with it. And any given day, some person can take offense. People are very easy to offend these days. I think mm-hmm. our American society has gotten way too soft.
Oh, way too soft.
And delicate. Mm-hmm. And a few years ago, I thought we were at the end of the pendulum with that. And I predicted it would start to swing back and we'd see some, more rational, maturity and people actually embracing humor again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And appreciating perspectives that differ from their own without mm-hmm. taking it personally or going out and trying to cancel that person for that. But I was wrong about that prediction. It's gotten worse. It's gotten a lot worse. So I don't know when the pendulum's going to swing at this point. Right. I thought we were over the edge, 4 years ago. And then a virus happened and has people even more sensitive. And it's not all because of the disease itself, but the way that culture shifted in response to it, the way people interact and communicate since then has shifted it and actually elevated the level of sensitivity rather than that pendulum swinging back like I predicted back in 2019.
Right. And maybe there might be some trust issues there too. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of don't know who to trust right now. And it feels like everybody's been stabbed in the back. We were on lockdown for so long. And I know it was a different situation in the city compared to the suburbs. Like I'm in the suburbs, so I could still go out for walks. I can still do whatever I did, but you were in the city. So like there was a whole different situation going on down there. And that was where we kind of got into it. And thank God we agreed to disagree, but you were in the city, I was in the suburbs. And we had a situation on Twitter where we were kind of like, this isn't right. Like, are you going to be able to go, you as a person yourself, as an individual, were you able to actually get out of your apartment and go for a walk in the city and do the things that I was able to do in the suburbs?
Yeah, no, you know what? Philadelphia, for the most part, I thought handled it well. We mm-hmm. saw what was going on in New York City. And we never let Philly get to that level. That was the first scare we saw. I mean, New York City was America's ground zero for that pandemic coming to America. And it was bad there. Hospitals getting overwhelmed and so forth. Philly did a very good job being proactive, but that also came with pain. And I did see restaurants close down and small businesses close down. My business was impacted minimally because we were already built to be able to operate virtually. So it was a very easy transition for my business. But I'm friends with a lot of restaurant owners down here and whatnot, and they really took some hits.
They got hit hard.
So it was. Overall, I think I'm proud of how Philadelphia handled it. Did they handle everything perfectly? Absolutely not. God, no.
Right.
It
was it's exactly a situation that, everybody's like, oh, okay, we're totally prepared for this.
Yeah. Now where Philadelphia did fall short, though, is this was a big thing online and across local news. The mayor of Philadelphia, after closing down indoor dining in Philadelphia, he was photographed on vacation in Maryland dining indoors with his family. And that brings it back to my expertise, which is PR. That's horrible optics. That is what damaged trust between citizens and our local leadership. As it should. So that
Philadelphia is also a business. Also, people have a tendency to forget that running a city is also a business. Also, sure. So and that there's those optics. Well, I mean, we saw it with Chris Christie too. He was sitting out on the beach.
On the beach. Yep, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So from just a PR and optics standpoint, there were some big mistakes. I mean, I hope the country never goes through something like that again. Certainly not in my lifetime. But hopefully leaders can learn from some of the flubs that we saw go on during that.
Now, what do you dealing with your clientele list coming back from this, total, years we've been down. Now we're actually finally getting back into a stride where we can get back to doing regular business. Do you have a lot of clients coming to you saying, all right, crisis management, if this ever happens again, what precautions do I need to take?
Yeah. Because I was so niche, because my business is so niche, our clients, especially in financial services, they didn't get hit nearly as bad as hospitality, retail, and so forth. Their clients needed them more than ever. Now, I did lose some business, early on. And one thing that I'm proud of is that after the shutdowns and whatnot, I didn't lay off anybody, a single person, because of the virus. And that's something I'm proud of. Where I got hit a little bit was the Great Resignation that followed. Corporate marketing departments. Yeah, the corporate marketing departments who laid off, a lot of staff in the early days and early, panic around the pandemic. We got to a point then later at the end of 2020, all through 2021 into 2022, we got into a point where all the ones who laid them off, now when they got back to business as normal, they were the most aggressive hirers. And they looked at, small agencies like mine as a buffet of talent. Because I do do a good job of training my people and developing them and helping them build massive portfolios in a very short period of time. So yeah, I had recruiters zeroing in on my company and every small agency owner I talked to during that time was dealing with the same problems and struggles we did from a talent standpoint. So that was, and I don't know if you probably didn't expect me to take the response in that direction, but that is where we were impacted more, no doubt about that.
Now, with the Great Resignation, as you just brought up, there's been a lot of talk about these new AIs that are coming out, the new software that is coming out, and people are kind of saying, okay, well, I resigned. Now I can't find a job because I'm going to be replaced by a robot. Talk to me about that, because not only ChatGPT is a huge, huge issue right now, but you have people like Steve Wozniak, who just came out kind of discrediting it, saying, okay, well, it's good, but it still has some fumbles. And then you have, like I said, other people worried that the technology is moving faster than the actual process itself. So let me know your expertise on that and where you're feeling this is all going.
Yeah. So that's a great question. It's so timely. It's one of the biggest questions I'm being asked right now when I talk to prospects and other, industry peers, other marketers in the financial services realm. I just got off a LinkedIn Live where we had a massive turnout where we focus specifically on ChatGPT and how this technology can really change the playing field when it comes to financial services marketing. So I'll talk to you a little bit about how I'm using it. And I know you brought it up in the context of the talent crunch. Yeah, mm-hmm. The way that this technology is growing, I mean, there are jobs, where people job hopped out of that job, where the business who lost that employee is just going to replace them with outsourced solutions and technology. It's a big thing that we're going to be seeing. So there is at first they called it the Great Resignation, then they called it the Great Reshuffle, because people who were getting laid off by one company were getting very quickly hired by another one who needs more talent. That's going to start to dry up a little bit. We just had an enormous jobs report for the month of January. We added 500,000, new jobs, which way outperformed expectations. But we've got a Fed who wants to chop those down. I mean, we have a Fed who is determined to chop down wage inflation, and the best way to chop down wage inflation is to get this hiring trend to slow down. They need some people being unemployed. That's the only thing that's going to bring down wage inflation, which is driving overall inflation. So one thing, as the Fed continues its actions and as this technology, continues to surge, and not just AI technology, but when you look at robotics and everything else that's going on right now, yes, we're going to get to a point where a lot of employers are fed up with dealing with job hoppers and whatnot, and they're just going to outsource and use technology to replace a lot of these positions. So I think we could have a perfect storm where jobs dry up very quickly between just the climate, the Fed and its motivations and the overall economy. And just where certain businesses are moving.
We're also seeing that in stock prices too, where employers are not going to have that much overhead if they cut the human aspect.
And I'll give you an example of how I'm using some of this technology, from a practical standpoint. So as a public relations agency, we're constantly reaching out to media and influencers to position our clients to get interviewed and be able to contribute to their stories and get them a good steady flow of press. So the other day I used my AI software. I actually don't use ChatGPT. I use a competing technology with it that's a little bit more catered to the type of work that I need to use.
I've seen there's multiple out there.
There are, yeah. So I entered in a prompt and told it to pull up a list of the top 50 personal finance journalists in America, give me their name, the outlet they write for, and their email address. It churned that out in 10 seconds. Had I given that chore, 6 months ago, if I had given that duty to an intern, it would have taken them at least 2 days. It probably would have needed a lot of climbing up whatever end product that I received. This did a very precise job and churned it out in 10 seconds. So the pro version of this technology that I use, the subscription is, I think, around $350 a year. Literally just from that one prompt I gave it, it almost paid for the entire year. That one assignment I gave it that it crunched out in 10 seconds, what I would have paid an intern to complete a project like that, it pretty much just paid for itself for the whole rest of the year.
I'm hearing that it's very useful in healthcare. It's being, so I mean, like a lot of middle managers, a lot of, jobs are going to be cut, and that's one thing that people are going to have to understand, that you're going to have to switch your talent from maybe one thing to another.
Yeah. And in my field, I mean, whenever I speak to students, who study public relations, my field, I've been telling them for a few years now, focus on your soft skills. Years ago, 4 years ago, I built a platform for us, and it's not an AI platform, it's a business intelligence platform, but I built it in anticipation for AI catching up and us being able to plug it right in there. So I'm taking this technology in stride now as it's making major advancements right now. While others are playing catch up, I'm still moving forward.
Right.
Because I've been ready for this for years now, and it's finally here. When I talk to these students, I tell them the way that technology is advancing, you got to focus on your soft skills, because a lot of the grunt work that would traditionally go to entry-level employees, that's all automated. My platform, I've completely automated the reporting process. It's completely automated. Whereas that would have typically fallen on an entry-level employee to prepare those monthly reports. That's all automated. So we don't need somebody to do that.
No.
We need, whether they're entry-level or any level, we need people who can be client and media-facing, who have the maturity, the professionalism, the humor, the likability. That stuff's important.
Right.
In my field, public relations, and I use that when I'm hiring too. I mean, they need to make me like them.
Right.
Because if I don't like them, my clients aren't going to like them, and the media is probably not going to like them. So
but
the likability is important. I don't care about necessarily all the hard skills. We can develop a lot of those. I can't help you develop a personality if you don't have one, though.
Right. And you bring this wonderful point up, is that everybody has been so electronically conditioned lately that they don't have the face-to-face anymore.
No, they really don't.
how do you overcome that now? And how do you tell these students and everything, like, look, you're going to have to be able to go out and start a conversation with someone. How are you going to do that?
I mean, some of them are terrified to pick up a phone because they're not used to that. They text, they text, they do everything electronically. Like, when you get into a work setting, you need to be able to pick up a phone and have a confident, mature conversation with somebody. A lot of them aren't used to that.
Yeah.
So they should be developing those skills in colleges. And, you follow me on Twitter. I mean, I've been very critical over the past few years of the university systems. I've been very critical of my own alma mater, and they know that. I'm probably on their naughty list right now.
You definitely have to drop it.
From some of the hard truths that I've called them out for. But it doesn't stop at just that one university. A lot of them are really failing their students right now. When we talk about ChatGPT, the universities need to be training these students how to be able to enter effective prompts. I'm not going to hold my breath that they're going to do that, because they're more worried about them using it to cheat on tests and essays and everything else. So they are going to deter students from using it rather than helping them develop it and utilize this in an effective manner. And that's problematic. Those are the skills that employers like me actually want them to be able to develop. These universities just, and I'm not saying all of them. I mean, there are universities who do a wonderful job, and departments within universities who do a wonderful job. But they got to wake up, and I'm just concerned that in my profession and so many others, they're just not keeping pace with real world expectations.
Well, do you maybe forecast that maybe people might go back to doing more apprenticeships than going for the 4-year degree?
I encourage it. Yeah, and that's one thing that I've been exploring. You know, my account management position, which is kind of the heart and soul of our whole business hierarchy and so forth. I have I've always required a 4-year degree for that position. I am actively re-exploring that, and I'm actually making some changes to that position that I'm going to be rolling out in the next couple months as we look to scale back up, because there's a lot of business opportunity and demand out there for us. I'm taking advantage of this early part of this year to overhaul our technology infrastructure and so forth, and then build a new account management role that is appropriate for the time that we live in and the technology tools that we have. So yes, that as I build that out, that's one thing I'm actively considering, and I'm glad you asked that, because I have not been impressed by what I've seen these universities produce, and don't take that away. I talk to a lot of phenomenally talented people who've worked with me, whether it was an internship or whatnot, who have been phenomenal. But not everybody with a 4-year degree is operating on that level. And there are big talent gaps in between them too.
Really?
That piece of paper is less meaningful to me than those soft skills that we talked about, and some of the other traits that I look for when hiring. So long story short, yes, that is something I'm actively looking at, is chopping that down to a 2-year plus equal industry experience to make up that 4 years.
That's amazing. It is actually, it's so amazing, because even Elon Musk is saying, you know what, come to me. Even if you don't have that 4-year degree, don't be worried. And so many people that don't have that 4-year degree are worried. They're like, well, what skills do I have? So it's actually pretty cool to see a lot of employers saying, you know what, even if you don't have it, come to me. We can see where to get you in there, because you may have those soft skills that somebody who, took the time to get $100,000 in debt at a university does not have. Now, we were talking the other night, and you had brought up such an amazing thing, that you are suggesting that employees of PR agencies read a certain book. Go into what you told me and why you feel that they should read this book.
Yeah, so that weaves right into the Chat GPT thing. So any modern public relations agency or marketing agency or advertising agency, creative agencies across the board, okay, they are all either already adopting that technology or similar technologies into their day-to-day processes, or if they're not, they're actively working on getting it woven in there. I don't, in 2 months from now, I just find it hard to believe there would be any creative agency operating without it. That's how much I think it's changing the playing field. Now, with this technology, you have to understand its limitations. It is responding to a prompt, and artificial intelligence is not the same as human intelligence. It's better than human intelligence at certain things, like recognizing patterns, making predictions based on those patterns, but it's only as good as the data that it has available to it. So anybody using it needs to understand that the end product is only going to be as good as the prompt. If you're asking the technology to create something based on information that it doesn't have access to, it's just going to fill in the blanks with randomness and be unfactual and pretty awful. But if you're giving it everything it needs, you understand how it processes that information and generates language based on that situation, you can really create some pretty cool stuff. So the book that you referred to is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And, there's a myth. A lot of people think that Frankenstein was the name of the monster. Frankenstein was the name of the doctor that created the monster. So when you're talking about using this technology, if you get a monstrosity that comes out of it and you still publish it, The content's not the monster. You, Dr. Frankenstein, who input the prompt and still published it, you're the real monster.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every PR person, every creative agency professional should have to read that book or watch the movie.
Yeah.
Through that lens to fully understand what's at stake here as you implement this technology and who the real monster is when you use it to produce bad content.
And it ties into pretty much every subject we have hit during this entire conversation, from cancel culture to, bad journalism to everything. And I think everybody's going to have to start taking their own accountability now, where they're going. Brian, thank you so much for all of this conversation. It has been such an eye-opening experience with you, talking to us about PR. Where can everybody get a hold of you at if they want to visit you?
Yeah, jump on my website, flackable.com. As I mentioned earlier, I tweet a lot. At Brian Hart PR. And I also recommend checking out my YouTube page. The philosophy that I talked about at the beginning of this conversation is credibility marketing. And if you visit our YouTube page, you'll see a lot of the videos that we post on there are very specific to credibility marketing. So check that out. Tatiana, I got a book coming out later this year, so maybe we can regroup and talk about the book a little bit in a few months.
I definitely hope you're going to be back on here also.
No, absolutely, and I'm privileged to be the first guest, and I look forward to seeing who else you bring on in the future. And
it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Maybe messy at times, but a lot of fun. But with every business, there's a lot of mess before you see the finished product. And too many people are just so used to seeing that finished product that they don't understand the mess that comes along with it. And that's why I am doing this podcast. So we can actually sit down and realize, hey, there's a lot of shit to go through before you smell the roses. So Brian, again, I thank you so much. And this is the Businessy Podcast.